Well, morning to those that are here in present, those that are seeing and looking at remote. It's a pleasure to be here and to be part of this project. I will speak to you briefly on some conditions on how to build your business. I will try to do this in two different lines. So one, which is the more traditional business, and another one that are more linked to technology business like startups. And I hope that it will be helpful for both. We, those that work with startups more oftenly, do understand that women entrepreneurship is very similar in numbers than manage entrepreneurship. So it's not so different. There is a small difference, but it's lots around. What is very different is actually the funding, the access to funding. And there are several reasons why. I don't think we have actually all of us, men and women, understood exactly why there is such a big gap. But that gap exists, and it's on us to tackle that. So, how to start your business? So first issue of the day, there was supposed to be something here, but we'll try to overcome that. You need to be ready. So what does this mean? Regardless of your opening a very small business, local business, either it is a coffee shop or something else, or if you are opening a technology company, you need to be ready. And what it means to be ready? It means that you need to understand what is your environment, your business environment. You need to understand how to set and incorporate. You need to understand what are the main regulations that will be applicable to your business. And you need to understand and manage and control not only the product that you are trying to sell, devo utilizar isto?
If you actually need to be control not only of your products, but also of the environmental context where you are going to incorporate and develop your business. That means that you understand the set of rules applicable in your country. And so every different country or even region will have a different set of rules that will be applicable to your business. So first thing is to understand what applies to your product. Is it regulated product? If it is regulated, in what terms? Are there any kind of restrictions to what you are trying to implement or sell? Or actually your product does already exist and you need to understand what are the market constraints that would be applicable to the development. If you have IP, how can it be protected? How does it work? Do you actually need to protect any kind of IP to develop your product? And where do you do that? And how do you do that? And Patricia will speak during this morning about that in much more detail. And the market, if it is regulated, the market that you are operating, if yes, are you compliant? What does this mean? This means that if you are starting a very small business and a business that has an open door to the public, you need to understand what kind of licensings do you need to implement, where to obtain those licenses. Are you going to need to speak to the municipality? Are you going to need to obtain a license from a governmental institution? Are you going to need and registered in some kind of institution or association, even if it's not by law, that actually others that can help for some reason to get context on what you need to establish. Also regarding you need to register your product anywhere. For those that create software, there is no need to register software anywhere, but it might be convenient, not necessary, but convenient for some reasons to protect whatever you are creating, if that will be the case. If you are creating something else, you actually need to protect your product in some other way. So first thing, do understand the context on the product and the company that you are. Secondly, get set. So if you understood the context, so you need to know also what is the product and your own what does this mean? How you will develop your business model. So what's going to be your business model? You need to incorporate the company or not. So there are a lot of small scale business that at the beginning, you actually do not need to incorporate. So you can start by incorporating if that makes sense to you. But if you are to work alone and you'll be working alone for quite some time, maybe that's not needed, actually. If that's not needed, maybe there's some money that you can save in there. So try to assess what you actually need to do to start developing. If you do not need to incorporate the company, maybe you can do it on your own, just like an independent worker or an independent consultant. That does not mean that, for instance, you will need accountants. You will always need accountants to start this. But maybe it doesn't make sense to incur further costs to incorporate. If you need to incorporate a company, how does it work? So what is your minimum share capital? How many shareholders do you need? How many directors do they have to be local, or they can actually, you can have a foreign partner or you can have a foreign director in your company. Most of the European companies and European regimes do accept sole shareholder companies. And so you actually, if you decide to organize your business that way, you can have a company in which you are just a sole shareholder and you are the sole director. And in most of the countries, minimum share capital starts from €1 per quota or per share. And so requirements in most of the jurisdictions are reduced to a minimum that actually most business can comply with. So try to understand what makes sense. Even if you're alone, it could make sense for you to incorporate, because with some other restrictions or constraints that the law might impose on you. So you need to understand what's going to be your business model in accordance with the jurisdiction and the region that you are working and developing. Then the second thing is how to contract. So you understand your context, you understand what is your business model and how to incorporate and what you need to establish your business. You need to understand how to contract on exactly that same market that you are. So what are the set of rules? Is it general sale contracts? Is it the provision of service? Actually, you are selling software as a service, or you are selling license. So what are the market standards in your product being developed? There are a huge variety of contracts that can be established and adapt to your product and your service. So we really you need to understand exactly what you are selling or providing, and what serves best the market you are addressing. And for that, once established, of course, we need to fine-tune exactly what are the contracts that you are going to use. ask a lawyer. So that's always the part of lawyers to do enter in your venture, because it can actually make a difference. Again, if you have a product or service that can be protected in terms of intellectual property, make sure you do the correct registration if that's applicable, or if it can be done, or if it's actually useful from any way. There are discussions regarding patents, if it is worth or not to register, depending on how complex they are, and how likely other people are to reach the same knowledge that we have on a certain matter. So assess not only from a standard perspective, but only on how complex that is and how best to protect your business model. If you are dealing with third parties and you need to pass your knowledge, make sure that you try to protect that with a non-disclosure agreement. Non-disclosure agreements are those type of agreements that we never know if it works until things get very. So, but it's better to have one that do not have at all. So make sure that if you are passing knowledge to third parties, regarding the product you are developing, that you are protected with pre-contractual arrangements with your business partners. Then understand compliance. So what does apply to you? Small business are not most of the time subject to heavy guidelines or rulings regarding these type of matters. So there's reports, but for those that actually deal with online business, for instance, you do need to have in place terms and conditions. You do need to have in place data privacy rules, regulations. And so you will need to understand exactly what you are supposed to do. What does that mean? It means that whenever collecting information, personal data, anyone regarding your business, you need to make sure that you actually can treat them and you actually can apply with whatever is being applied on this matter, which is very strict. So that this does not apply to general business, open door to the public, but apply to everything that is online, the provision of services, if it is not online. And so there is rules that are becoming more and more strict and allow you to at least think about it and to consider them. There are help nowadays with service providers working online that actually can tackle part of this and provide part of these services also to you for smaller and smaller fees every day. So, but you need to understand. So if you are collecting or not data from your customers, from your suppliers, from all the stakeholders that you are intervening with, interacting with, and what do you need to have in place in order to comply with these rules. The same applies if you need to provide any kind of reports. So it's not usual. Businesses are subject to reporting to governmental authorities, but it can happen. So not only from, of course, accounting and taxes, that's mandatory, but it can happen in some situations that you actually need to provide reports to governmental authorities. And if that's the case, you need to understand exactly what and when. Because failure and lack to provide those will actually mean that might get fined at some stage. So do understand what your regulatory obligations and what you need to do in order to be able to comply with those obligations. And if you establish a company, you need to understand and take care of your governance. So if you are having shareholders, and I will speak through this a little bit more in detail in a while. If you have shareholders, you need to clearly establish what is your agreement with them. There are a lot of business that are established between good friends, wife and husband, brother and sisters, whatever you name it. And it's the type of business that everyone says, it's my fellow for a long time and nothing can go wrong. It's usually when it goes wrong. So make sure that you have an agreement regarding not only how your relationship will be governed while you are business partners, but also how to depart from a business partnership if things do not go as smooth as you think. Because always be issues, there will always be problems, and this type of may actually help you to solve those problems whenever they appear. So, you know your context, you establish your business environment, your company, or you as a sole practitioner. You need to further develop how to sell, how to provide. If you are doing a business that is an online business, for instance, I have told you before, you will need terms and conditions, and you need sales conditions on your. Also, if you are not doing an online business, you probably will need general sales conditions. So it's very helpful if you are just a service provider in any kind of area, marketing, accounting, whatever, consultancy of any kind, you should have your own terms of sales and conditions. Why? Because that's settled. It's not always easy to implement, especially when you're addressing bigger clients or companies that are bigger than you. And most of them actually, they have their own purchase terms as well. So that can create some types of difficulties regarding the organization between these two sets of rules. Actually, it's very helpful that you have your own in terms of sales conditions. Why? Because that will determine exactly what are the terms under which you provide your service or you sell your product. That will provide the terms in which you will be paid and when you will be paid. That will what will be your liability under the provision of or the sale of the product. And you can, by that way, try to limit, if that will be the case, your own liability on that sale of business, sale of or provision of service. So make sure there is a minimum set of rules. It doesn't need to be something very complicated. It doesn't need to be a 10-page of sales conditions. It can be just one page. It can be something that actually paragraphs that are proposal that you usually send to whatever clients. Make sure that these rules exist, because that's what will protect you. There are other ways in which actually you can develop business and develop and sell your product. Maybe you can do it better in other markets. It doesn't need to be actually out of the country. You can still within the same country decide that for a different market, you actually need help with other service providers. And so you can establish things like distribution agreements. Okay. And, actually, this can work both to products and service. And so you might need someone that helps you get clients in a different region or a different geographical territory. In that case, it might be helpful to have an agent. establish an agreement with someone that can help you develop the market and that will get the fee for any service that you will get through her. That will help you enlarge your business capacity, and that will help enlarge your business, your business as a whole. Just make sure that, of course, you have the capacity to serve that new geographical territory. Because there's nothing worse than overpromising in whatever business that might be. Other ways of doing it, mostly if you're doing it a business that is online, you have license agreements. And so if you have established products and you are selling it online, it's usually software, might make sense to license that to third parties and people will use it because you are licensed. And licensing agreements can have a fixed term, can be forever. It's whatever you decide it makes sense to your product and the service that you are providing. If you are providing a service online, maybe it can be done as a service, which means that people will pay a monthly fee or an annual fee or whatever other periodic rates that you establish to assess your product and the services. It makes sense in a large variety of services and can make sense to your business as well. Then you need to also consider what are your after-sale obligations. Okay, there are businesses in which the after-sale is very limited. So if you have a coffee shop, people just take their breakfast and go, and no one gets sick. Your service is done, and there is no after-sale. But if you are the provision of services in any other area, or if you're developing a product that you are selling, in most situations, there can be after-sale obligations. And so you need to understand exactly what are your obligations of assistance and customer care to your clients. So make sure that you have that mapped and make sure that you have in place what are the necessary practices for you to cover for that. If you're selling something online, for instance, you need to know that in most of the countries, there is legislation that requires devolutions and returns of products. And so that situation, in some cases, it's mandatory for a period of time. If Portugal, I believe it's 14 days. If you buy something online, you can return and get your money back. So if that's your area of business, make sure that you are able to comply with receiving things back, returning payments, and have everything in place to take care of that. Okay. And then for bigger business, there might be the needs of governance and investor care. So if you have investors, if you're funding not from your own money, but from elsewhere, you might need to give regular feedback to your shareholders or to your investors of some sort. Way forward. So if I'm started, and I've started well, and things are developing according to my business plan, and the company will need money to grow. So what will I do? You need probably, if you cannot support it just on sales, or because that takes longer, you can, but that takes longer. You need to access to capital more thoroughly and more fastly. You might need to assess new investors. So you need to consider what do you need to regulate and what you need to establish in advance in terms of your terms in order to access and to present to new investors. Also, if you're trying to expand to new markets, you need, again, to start from slide one and understand your in different countries, okay? Or even different regions in the same country. There are different ways of doing business in different regions in some cases, or there might be local requirements. In Portugal, we do not have differences by regions, but in wider countries, there are local regulations based on local jurisdictions. So make sure that what works in one place can actually be established in the same way in a different territory. Because if it's not, if that's not the case, you have not prepared in advance, you'll probably be subject to fines. But also understand if you are entering with new products, if you started your base product and then you want to expand to some new product, you need to understand again, how does that comply with the regulations existing? What do I need to protect my new product? Do I develop it in the same way that I've done with my base product, or actually this new product has a different scalability that requires that I develop differently? And for instance, the first one I've licensed, the second one actually should be a software as a service or something, or things like that. And also understand your competitors. So the fact that you have done very well in the market does not mean that the market next door will receive you with the same success and with the same easiness in entry that market. So there might be also other people that are already established, and you need to understand who they are, and if for some reason they can block you, and what is the difficulty in assessing that new market. So how to fund. Different funding applies to different type of business. And so what makes sense in a certain product service type will not be the same that will make sense in different types of business. So make sure you can get it right. The world has gone somehow complicated in terms on how you can fund your business. It's different ways of funding actually means more opportunities, but also means more complexity in terms of regulation. It means more complexity in terms of compliance. It means different terms on what you need to prepare the success. And so be prepared. Think about in advance what makes sense to your business. If you are thinking about small companies in traditional business, most of them will actually be using bank loans. Bank loans are very useful, but can be a burden on your balance sheet, will be a burden on your balance sheet, of course. So you need to assess if you actually can return it. The bank will do that assessment as well. But how you will be able to reimburse that, what is the interest rate that will be applicable, if you can pay them or not, what are the different opportunities that the several banks will provide you on that. Bank loans and third-party debt actually will mean that you owe money to someone, but you keep the full shareholding of your business. So it makes sense to a huge variety of business, and to most traditional for certain. If you're thinking about if your product is a new product, digital technology product, most of the times, and if you want to scale fast, most of the times it might make sense to look for a strategic investor. Strategic investor does not necessarily just means money. It's someone that can help you to develop, and that can mean money, or can mean money and technology, or can mean just technology, or can be business partner that actually can help you tackle a certain area, geographical territory, or someone that partners with you and has some specific product that actually does a market fit with your own. And so there are huge variety of ways under which you can actually assess strategic investors. So think what is strategic. Might be money, might be market, it might be product fit, it can be a huge variety of things. One possibility also that you have available is subsidies and grants. These can be very helpful. They are non-dilutive. Most of them are not reimbursable. So it means that you actually can further develop your business and your product using money that you will not have to give back again. And that will not mean that you have a new shareholder. Not free. What I mean it's not free is that you will need to very complete reports on how you spend it, what it was used to, what have you actually developed with it, what have you gained, and so compliance is important. When you think of subsidies, think about it as a very opportunistic way of getting funding, but make sure that you're able to comply with the requirements. Okay, rules change a lot in the last few years, and non-compliance with subsidy rules most of the time means that directors of the companies or the entrepreneur itself might be called to reimburse full from its personal assets the monies that were not properly used. So it's a very helpful instrument that you can access actually on your local jurisdiction, but also an EU instrument. But you need to make sure that you fully understand what are the rules and what are you supposed to provide as compliance and reports, and actually what is the criteria that will be used to fully understand if you've complied or not with the obligations. Okay, if the obligations are not complied with, you might be asked to reimburse, and that of course usually happens. There is no more money to reimburse, and so that means most of the cases problems to the entrepreneurs. So make sure that it's not only useful when you receive it, that it's useful when you have to conclude and submit the final report. Then you have other instruments like debt to equity. So there are instruments that are more used in new technology business that actually can mean that you can start issuing debt, but that can be convertible and converted into equity. Why is this useful? Because you have an option either to pay or to get a new shareholder. Okay, so if you are not able to pay, you will be diluted, but at least it's something that will not be a burden on the balance sheet anymore of the company. So you will not have to reimburse them. These can be issues of bonds, which are more traditional, but to smaller companies, it can mean whatever. So a loan from a strategic investor that you get from someone, and you establish a term for reimbursement, and with an interest or no interest. And whenever that term arrives, if you are not able to pay, they would convert and be your business partners, be your shareholders in the company. So usually this is attached to getting the right investor and the strategic investor. Not all investors are willing to do this. So you need to find someone that actually is willing to do it. But in some cases, it can be very helpful because it gives you a possibility that, for instance, and the flexibility that banks will not give you. And that's some investors are not willing to. So an instrument that can be used, and you can be resourceful in two different ways. And for more digital businesses, a new way of funding, more complex, it's with tokens. Tokens is an abstraction layer on whatever product we are developing. It's usually linked to online services, digital platforms, and linked with the product that this platform developed, and how I can these tokens that most of the times are credits. So I exchange money for credits in a platform, and how can I use these tokens in this? Still, that can be in digital business a very useful resource of funding, and it can make sense in a few variety of businesses. So, getting more into digital business and how to get some funding on your startup business, if it is technology-wise. What you need to do in advance, you need to have your shareholders agreement in place. It will be a very long document. If you have business partners, make sure that you have the rules among yourselves that will rule your relationship, and that whenever things do not go as it should, you are able to have the less impact possible in your business and not to be disruptive to the company and your business. Security. Select your target investors. Again, not all of them will be a good fit to you. So make sure that you understand what you're looking for in terms of investment and how to approach the best investors. Do your own pre-due diligence. If you are getting investors, they will do some type of due diligence. So make sure to know your company and your business well enough to at least tackle some of the issues that probably they will find. Okay, there's nothing worse than in a funding round or when trying to assess investors that actually they come and tell you, I found a problem. If there is a problem, make sure that you understand what the problem is in advance, and you tackle that problem or you discuss that problem with your investor, because it will arise somehow and somewhere. And so make sure that you tackle that first. Have your own terms, okay? Submit your own terms to your investor. Why is it important? Most of the times they will establish their own terms for investment, and that's absolutely fine. But make sure that you establish the basis for the discussion, okay? It will be easier to have that basis for the discussion established by you, and then change and accommodate than actually receiving the terms of investors first, and prepare your pitch to the investor. I've already discussed most of these things. Again, governing rules are essential. IP is essential, especially in software business, digital business. There's always a question that I make to teams, and that is, what will happen if your coder runs away tomorrow? What will happen to your business? When I started doing some mentoring to startup companies a few years ago, I received this CEO of a startup that came to me and said, "Oh, I'm the CEO of this company, and I have two other shareholders. One of them is our marketing head, and the other one is a developer, And we were discussing the percentage among ourselves, and I should get 60%, and the market 30%, and the developer would have 10% of the company, and he was not happy and he disappeared. So how can I get whatever he has at that time?" And I asked him, "Do you have a shareholders agreement? Do you have IP assignment agreement?" No. So, and the developer has an employment agreement with you, a service provision agreement? No. Okay, and so in this situation, what happens, and to be clear, is that if someone works and develops something, is not paid, he has not agreed to sign whatever IP he has produced. It's his or hers. So things that seem unimportant at the beginning, if not with properly, will cause you major problems or may cause problems. So make sure that even if the company doesn't worth €1 at the beginning, whenever the company, actually these type of problems are easier to tackle when the company is not worth much. And so make sure that if you get someone on the team, either as a shareholder or as an employee, or in any other way, make sure that these people find correct agreements that will allow you to keep your business if something goes wrong. Due diligence, we've already discussed this, so make sure there are no unpleasant surprises whenever you are discussing funding rounds with an investor. And then term sheet, play by your rules. Again, it's easier if you set your basic terms, because that will set the ground for discussion instead of being subject to the rules of third-party investor. And then prepare to pitch. Pitching experience can be different, very different, depending on the audience approach. Make sure that you know your audience, you know your investor, and you personalize the pitch to him. Okay. That's absolutely amazing. Don't. This is easier to say than to experience. Don't go to last-minute funding round. Okay. Desperate fundraising means that you accept difficult terms that will be very difficult to have in the future. Okay. As tragic as it may seem, if you are accepting money knowing that in 6 months' time your business will probably die anyway, do not take them back. Okay. Because for several reasons, it's loss of investors' money, but it's also loss of credibility from your side. And so one thing is a business going wrong, one thing, another thing is a business going wrong, knowing that the business will go wrong anyway if you accept it. Keep your minority investors involved. Okay. If you have minority investors, even if you are controlling shareholder, do not decide without discussion. Okay. It's crucial that they are involved because they can be a hurdle in so many different ways in the future. So make sure that we are all aligned in these efforts, make things happen. Good counseling, that's always important. Okay. Counseling, whatever counseling that might be, is an investment. Might be a cost at the beginning, but it's most of the times an investment. And make sure that actually you still have control of your business in the funding round that comes. And that control can be gained or can be kept in very different ways. So it can be a shareholding votes control, or it can be a governance control. It can be a decision control actually on the board. Can mean very different. But if you're getting funding from someone else, make sure that you still control of your organization. And that's it. Thank you so much. Happy to, don't know if we have Q&A. Teresa?
So I don't know if you have any questions. You can put the questions in Portuguese if you want. Okay, another version. Good morning. Cecilia Priority, an investor involved in private equity. I'm an angel investor myself. I think it'd be very helpful for the audience if you explain further about a clean cap table and what it actually could mean, because regrettably, what I've seen in Europe mostly is that angel investors think that it's a wise move to get 50% of the company or 60% of the company at the very beginning, and this is so detrimental to the founders. Could you explain this further?
Sure. So this can mean different. So cap tables on different business mean different things. So if you have a more traditional business, not so technological, this usually means that if you have a business partners tend to have bigger stakes. If you have a more startup technology, digital business, and the perspective of scalability, you actually are betting more not on the business itself, but on the team that has built that. Of course, of the strength of the product and the scalability of the product, but mostly on the team. That means that, like I've said before, whenever you go to funding round, make sure founders still have control. And that's important in so many ways. At least in the first rounds, you should not lose control. Whenever you go deeper in different rounds, it's natural and common that you start losing some control, because actually you are valuing your business in a higher amount. And so whoever pays more and gets more money and helps you reach another different states of growth will, of course, have a bigger chunk of your shareholding in the company. But it's important that at the beginning, whenever we are talking about digital technology business, you are in control of the business, because you actually are the ones that know how to operate and make it work. It's really important, whoever invests first, that understands that the way it can protect the money invested can have very different ways of getting that protected, but that should be 50% of the business, totally in agreement. It can be 30, it can be 10. It really depends on what is the area of activity that the company is developing, but should not mean getting control of the business. Otherwise, you will convert entrepreneurs into employees. And that has created a huge problem with motivation and on the longer term. And so the things with startups is that whenever you invest, as you are investing in companies that have poor balance sheets, that of course the amount of investment, whatever that might be, that you put in the company, most likely would be sufficient to buy the whole company or to buy the business. But that's not the purpose of the investment. The purpose of the investment is further development to reach a different state of growth. Those discussions will be reassessed at every round. And the trading off between what is my shareholding and what will be my future, it really depends on the valuation that further investors will accept to pay to fund my company. So one of the things that usually, whenever you reach your third funding round, that might be a problem, is you probably will need to clean your cap table. And that means somehow reaching new balances in the cap table for new investors. And that might mean that you need to rebalance the position of some shareholders. Either those are investors or from the founding team, from the founders. Okay, for several reasons. Because if you have more than one founder, not both of them or the three of them, they might not have the same weight in the team. There might not be exactly what the team needs to take the company to the next step. And so it's important on these things to keep an open mind and to understand that what matters is the sustainability of the company and further growth, because further growth will actually all of the shareholders at least have a higher evaluation and expectedly to be more successful whenever they can make an exit.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't know if online. Someone? If that's not the case, thank you very much.